right. All right. Welcome everyone to the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce Technical Assistance Workshop. We are about to get started in a moment. We have with us today Dr. Thomas. So we're going to give it about 5 minutes to get everybody to log on. During this time, please take the time to share this on Facebook. You can create a watch party. You can share the item. We are on Facebook. So let's go ahead and do that. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. For those on Facebook, if you want to be a part of the conversation, if you want to ask questions, please click on the link and join us through Zoom so that you can be a part of this conversation. Dr. Thomas is an amazing psychiatrist that can speaks directly to our community. So this is your opportunity to join us on Zoom and have your questions and thoughts shared with us as we have this very important conversation for our community. As you know, there's a lot of things going on nationally and locally, and we want to make sure that people are aware and understand what they need to do to make sure their mind, body, and soul is right. And that begins with mental health. All right, so we're going to, let me start my own watch party here. We're going to give a few moments for people to join us. We're going to start exactly at 10:05. 10:05, we're going to start this important conversation. So please share, make sure people know Dr. Thomas is going to come with it. I got a little snippet, a preview of her presentation, and I'm excited because this is the information we need to hear as a community. This is the type of information we need to have. So join the conversation through Zoom. Make sure you click that link and join the conversation. It is in the comments right now. All right, my watch party has started. All right, we are sharing. I'm inviting folk right now to make sure they are part of this conversation. These are the type of conversations we need to be having in our community, and we want to thank Dr. Thomas for being a part of that. Join through Zoom if you want to make sure that your questions and comments can be heard. Click the link that's actually in the chat and in the, not the chat, in the, the comment section on Facebook. But right now we are sharing this, inviting during this critical time that we currently have, and we're going to get started in less than 1 minute. So please join us, share, so that we can have this very real conversation, because not only as Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, we focus on our business community because we got to make sure we have an economic foundation for anything that we do as a community, and our small business owners are the foundation of that. So that's why we're here. But we know there's a lot going on in our community, and we want to make sure that our mindset is in the right mindset, our minds, our mental state is in the right mindset as we navigate our work and our lives. So share. I see quite a few folk coming on Facebook. Thank you very much. All right, and it is now 10:05. So I want to welcome everyone to the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce Technical Assistance Workshops. We've been doing these workshops literally weekly since COVID-19 has started. We used to do it on a monthly basis to provide businesses with hands-on technical assistance, where we bring in industry experts to give very realistic information that they need to expand their business and become successful business owners. Today we have Dr. Thomas, and I just want to thank her for being here today. And I want to make sure, first of all, pass it over to our president, Mr. Eric Knowles. But before I do that, please click the link in the chat to join us through Zoom. For those that are on Zoom, you can use the Q&A function to ask any questions that you have. Use the chat to make any comments, and let's have a very engaging session. With that, Mr. Knowles, you got the floor. Gotta unmute your mic, Mr. Knowles.
Wanted to disturb any while you were doing the introduction, but welcome and good morning, and welcome everyone. And I'm excited about our conversation this morning. Got my favorite psychiatrist on the line on our Zoom. One of my favorite dance partners as well. She's a great dancer, so they gotta watch out. And they're talking about a conversationalist. But you know, the chamber, as you said, Matt, we've been doing these Zooms, technical assistance, and want to thank you for continuing to bring our community together. Obviously, we're challenged during COVID-19, and the challenge is going to continue because, as we say, it's the new norm. And really, it's been engaging. You know, we as a chamber meet up every day at 4 o'clock so that we can kind of, depress from the day and the challenges that we have through the week. And a lot of our conversation really is like we're sitting around the coffee table and having a conversation and sharing information with one another. And I'm going to say this at the beginning, I'm going to say it at the end. You know, that anecdote, I say we share information. And one of the things that I always share, did you all call your car insurance company and get that discount? Because as I say, State Farm is offering 25% off of taking 25% off of your cars. And that's a big relief to know that, because our car insurance in Florida, especially Dade County, is out the roof. And so those little tidbits, call your car insurance company and save some money. We're not driving as much as we had been, but that's not what we're here for today. We're here to share information, but we're here from my good friend, Dr. Delvena Thomas. And how are you this morning, Doc?
I am peachy keen. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for inviting me to come on and share some pearls and just have a great engaging dialogue like we have been at 4 o'clock, sharing information and helping people to be great and to be their best selves and to feel content and happy. And, you know, all of this, although COVID-19 is happening right now.
COVID-19, police brutality, people dying, there's a lot going on.
You know, exactly. And that was one of the things I was saying. Here we are dealing with COVID-19, and then our community is dealing with the issues of police brutality. So, and obviously what's happening in Minneapolis right now, there's a lot of stress on our community in general, the Black community, whether it's the business community, whether it's our community as a whole. So I'm going to step back and let you and Matthew navigate through this, and I'll jump in. I'll get in where I fit in, as they say.
I want you to do that. I want you to do that. And so, you know, the event that happened recently with this gentleman who was murdered, I'll have to say I did make some changes to my presentation because Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, as we all know, it is it's open to everyone. However, there is exact and specific representation for minorities, for Blacks, for Islanders, for African Americans. And so it's important today, as we're talking about mental health and entrepreneurs and small business owners and business, that we have to include a lot of these things that are from our history, a lot of these influencing factors, because these things play out in your businesses. They play out for you as employees, as staff members. And so allow me to just sort of set the agenda so people know that what we're doing today, what type of presentation this will involve. As entrepreneurs, we pride ourselves on being self-sufficient, being creative, having the ability to bounce back, to make more with less, to be resilient. We know that with some of the studies, a lot of the studies, that half the people who start a business or a company, they have some sort of mental health problem. And really it stems from stress, because there's a lot of unknown when you're an entrepreneur, when you have a business. There are a lot of things that happen unexpectedly. And oftentimes, not just in the beginning of that startup or having a business, some business owners and entrepreneurs still have, 1/3 of them, lifetime of mental illness or mental health problems. So being mindful of mental health is essential in your business. And so this is perfect. Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, Eric knows, and Matthew, that you guys and your staff have thought to help in ending the stigma so we can have this conversation. Now,
Doc, let me, like I said, I'm gonna jump in where I fit in, at least. And
yeah, that's what he say. He say, I'm gonna fall back, but then he'll jump on in. Go ahead.
So listen, allow me to say this first. I have a whole agenda to present, so we're gonna get everything.
And I'm allow you to do that. But we talk about the fact that the COVID, I can't say COVID-19 is a pandemic. But the reality is, Black America has been facing a pandemic since 1619.
Since the 1500s, sir. And I will show you. I will show you in my slides since the 1500s.
So we're on the same page.
We are. So
take it from there. So you, like you said, from the 1500s. So let's take it from there and let's bring it to today.
Gotcha. Okay, so today you will hear some of our history, African-American history, and why we do have the disparities that we do and how these things manifest in our businesses. You'll hear a little bit about COVID-19, how it has exacerbated some of the mental health problems that we already have because of our history dating back to the 16th century. You'll also hear about, okay, so after COVID-19, what do we do now to help our employees? Because it's important to have your businesses, you have to have that support there. You got to be cognizant of their mental wellness. We also have to talk about mental health in the workplace. How do we continue to support that? And I want to give you guys the basic recommendations and considerations, but I also want to leave you with some very specific considerations for entrepreneurs and business owners. So we know that African Americans are 20% more likely to have serious psychological distress than whites, than the majority. Our depressive episodes are more disabling, they're more persistent, they're more resistant than whites. And the reason being is that we have to endure racial traumas and minority stress that other populations do not. So allow me to present to you the first. Let's see, presentation, which is what you were saying, Eric. I need your eyes on the screen, my dear.
Yes, ma'am. I was inviting folks, making sure we got folks coming in.
Nice one. So check this out. We've had 450 years of inequality and only 50 years to recover. Let me say that again. On my timeline, you see the transatlantic slave trade began somewhere around 1500. We've had 450 years of inequality and only 50 years to recover. There's a legacy of limitations. Whites were buying property, they were building houses, they were receiving education when we were not. They were starting businesses while people of color were denied all of these things for almost 400 years. 400 years. So then came along the 13th Amendment, but it didn't stop there because we had Jim Crow laws. So we were still limited in our abilities to try to receive loans, open businesses, attain or acquire property. We had civil rights. And so we really were behind because the majority had a 400-year head start. Slavery was outlawed in 1865, but white people already had the land, the education, the business, the connections, and the power. They had everything that we didn't for 400 plus years. So Jim Crow, we were free, but we were not equal because Jim Crow laws, they perpetuated this head start by making it legal to treat people of color unfairly and to keep us at a disadvantage. And some of these things still play out today. We have barriers in all domains where typically in the lowest SES, socioeconomic status, and we've been kept there by discriminatory laws, unfair treatment in the justice system, the disparities there, and unscrupulous housing practices. These things have created generational effects. You hear people talk about generational curses and breaking curses. So a lot of that has to do with the emotional traumas that were created from slavery, post-slavery, but also because of the challenges that we had during this 400 years of not receiving equal access to what we need to live. So Blacks are less likely to learn about handling finances. We're trying to overcome that. We have organizations like the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce to help us with that. We have the BPN. We have to find ways to reduce our taxes because typically those are not things that's not information shared with us. So we may be paying higher taxes in comparison to the majority because we just haven't had access to that information. Seeking higher education, I think we've really, we've actually probably resolved that issue. We're very educated as a people. Getting good nutrition, we're working on that. We've been sharing information and educating one another on, you know, diet and exercise and the importance of eating healthy and what things to eat and why. And then so there's the other barrier of obtaining health insurance and life insurance. For the longest time, a lot of Black folks would not have life insurance. And so you and I and Matt, you guys know, life insurance is one of those things that has created opportunities for the majority, right? Because if your father leaves you, Trump is an example of some generational wealth also. Some folks, they have created generational wealth because of life insurance plans. If your father or your mother leaves you $100,000, $200,000, $250,000, $500,000, $1 million, you know, depending on your plan. Pardon?
Tax-free.
Tax-free. There's a lot you can do with that money. So people have to understand. Some people say, well, I'm not going to be here anymore. What's the point of me getting that money? And it's not just about paying for your funeral. It's about allowing them to take that money and open a business, buy some property, buy some real estate. So life insurance is essential for those means. Now, let's talk about enduring the socioeconomic impact. People have heard of redlining. Most Black folk have heard of redlining. Yep. Right? This is what causes the disparity or limits Black folks from certain housing. We have a history, like I said, of being denied loans. Now that comes into play today. We've been talking about PPP. How many Black-owned businesses have really gotten access to that money? And so, you know, we were on a call the other day, and on that call, someone mentioned, well, they don't know what the applicants look like. They don't know if they're a minority or not, or what your race is because it's not on the application. You and I both know, all of us know, when folks are racist or when they don't want to share with a minority, they will go the extent of finding out what you look like. And now everything is on the internet. Everything is out there on Google. You can Google someone's name, pictures pop up everywhere. Go on LinkedIn, picture pops up. So if there's an agenda to deny and limit, they will, and they have the access to do that, whether they ask you on the application or not. We've been denied loans. We've been denied housing and jobs and advancement. Role models, protection. We see that with Ahmaud Arbery. We have no protection. Those guys killed him. No one came to his defense. They were not arrested for months. The other day, Mr. George Floyd, we have no protection. And I won't waste the time to speak personally about my own experience with police officers recently. We have no protection. I called 911 on a police officer. They came, but they came to help the police officer who was mistreating me. So we have a basis, we have reasons for the emotional stress and the trauma. Our baseline of mental wellness is not where the majority, where theirs hangs out. Ours is somewhere different. We're already starting off with anxieties and hypervigilance and feeling insecure because of what happens in America. Now, I won't go into the GI Bill, but that's another area, Eric, you and I, pardon?
I was like, just thank you, Dr. Thomas. You healing me with these words coming from a psychologist. Like, thank you for showing the history that's behind where we are today. It's just I'm just so thankful. Thank you. Just keep going. I'm sorry.
We have to do this.
You got it.
Yeah, it's okay. We have to do this so we can understand why are we where we are today? Why is today happening? And so, Eric, the GI Bill, you are a veteran, you were in the Army. There were disparities with the GI Bill. African Americans did not benefit nearly as much as white Americans from the GI Bill. It was deliberately designed to accommodate Jim Crow. A lot of people don't know that. Now, we won't hang out on this slide too much, but the reason why I wanted to include this is because, yes, we have disparities in health and healthcare. African Americans still have higher rates of strokes, diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, heart disease, sexual molestation, and child abuse. Now, what does this mean to you as a business owner? As a business owner, all of my staff are minorities. So you have to be aware of the potential conditions of your staff, because that means if they have to take off because of being sick or going to a doctor's appointment, they may not be as productive as you want them to be. So this is a possibility that some of your employees, or even you as a business owner, that you may be enduring some of these things. We have these disparities. Black children, some of your staff might have kids who have asthma. They're 500% more likely to die from an asthma attack than white children. And then we see some of the other disparities there. Doctors spend less time with African Americans than their white counterparts. Now check this out. When George Floyd was murdered, EMS showed up on the scene, first responders showed up on the scene and did not do their job at all. They did not render first aid the way that they were supposed to. They did everything wrong for this young man who was actually dead on the scene. They say he was dead on arrival to the hospital. He was dead on the scene. Now, a lot of that, the reason why they didn't render care for him, I believe, is because he was brown, African American. We see that all the time, the disparity. So here we are. These are the enduring psychological, this is the enduring psychological impact. This is based on everything that I just showed you. So I think I've proven to you that there's a reason, there's a basis for higher rates of mental illness or more debilitating types of depressive occurrences in our people, and why mental health awareness is important for us as business owners, not just for ourselves, but also for our employees, our staff, and how it affects them. We need to be aware. What are some of the symptoms that can arise? What can happen? What are some of the signs that can occur? Because we've already been set up for some of this. A lot of us probably have PTSD. Now, with COVID, we see that, so I just showed you prior to COVID that Black Americans, African Americans, Islanders, Blacks, minorities, that we were already enduring certain types of mental health disturbances because of our history, because of the way we have to live in America. But then you compound that with COVID-19 and we see that people have anxiety, they have worry, they have fear. And as we're opening back up, those things are not dissipating. People are more frightened because now there's this concern that, hey, there will be another wave in July and more people will die, or that in September it'll come back and it'll be more ravishing than before. And then there's a concern about folks not adhering to the practices that have been recommended by the specialists and by the government, and that's to wear your mask and to social distance. People aren't doing that. So our anxieties and our fears are not, they are justified. They're warranted. So people have another higher level of mental health disturbance because of COVID-19. And we see with COVID-19, there's been increases in domestic violence, that we've had more drug abuse, some more alcohol abuse. So these are things to be aware of, business owners, as you're opening your businesses and your employees are coming back to work. How did they do during the last 3 months, the last 4 months? Prior to COVID, we needed to be aware of our employees' state of mind, but now it's even more essential. And so one of the things, and I'll give other recommendations at the end, but one of the things right now that I have to interject is this. When you open your business and people come back to work, have a huddle, have a team meeting, do some processing. If you need to bring a neutral party in, a third party in to help you with that, have someone to moderate that meeting. Have a huddle with your staff so people can just talk to one another and share what has been going on with them during these last 3 months, 2 months, 4 months. And so hopefully, while people were on this stay-at-home order, while we were voluntarily quarantining, you were communicating with your staff, you were communicating with your the members of your business family to just sort of keep their spirits up, to keep them abreast of things, to let them know that things would be okay. Hopefully that was happening. So the processing when they come back to work, when you open, that should go smoothly. So what I'm saying to you is now after COVID-19, we're still in COVID-19, but employees and staff, they need us even more than before because of all the challenges that they have had at home and because of living in fear for these last several weeks. Mental health in the workplace is important. And so we gotta address it. Now, the next thing, let's talk about improving your team's mental well-being. How do we do that? So every organization is impacted by employees who struggle with mental health concerns. Each and every organization, nonprofit, for-profit, sporting teams, entertainment venues, restaurants, wherever, medical offices, practices, schools, every organization is impacted by employees struggling with mental health concerns. The police departments, the fire departments. Mental illness is a leading cause of disability in the United States for people ages 15 to 44. All right, depending on what studies you review, some say 1 in 5 have a mental health disorder in a given year, some say 1 in 4. We know that anxiety is the most common, followed by depression, and sometimes they commingle and they occur together. Over 25% of adults will have some form of mental illness, but only 10% or less than will seek treatment. So this is another reason why as business owners, as managers, as supervisors, as coworkers, we should be aware that people are probably struggling with a mental health problem and they're not getting treatment or they're not saying anything about it. Thank God we haven't had any of these circumstances or situations where an employee goes into the office and shoots up everyone. But you know, that was happening. I won't say, it was sort of frequently. It seemed to occur more than usual a couple of years ago. It was the post office, but then also the young man in Virginia who went into the workplace of his girlfriend and killed, or not even, I don't even think she was his girlfriend, but he killed her and shot up some other people in there. So, and people always ask, well, how will we know if someone is mentally disturbed? How would we know that? So you got to make the assumption that everyone is struggling and dealing with something. That is an okay time to make an assumption because everyone has a problem that they're dealing with. It's just a given. The world is not, life isn't easy. It ain't fair to all of us. So you know there's something going on, whether it's with dealing with their kids, with their spouse, or their significant other, with dating, with themselves, the low self-esteem. It's a lot of things. Financially, commonly the issues also are rooted in financial issues. And now with COVID-19, it's more significant than before. Those things have been exacerbated because people have lost jobs. Maybe your employee, they were still working and receiving a paycheck, but their husband or their wife was laid off from work. So now instead of having 2 incomes, they have only 1. So there are a lot of considerations here. Problems with mental well-being impact workplaces in numerous ways, including workdays lost. So this is very relevant to business owners and entrepreneurs, because if your staff, if your employees, if they're suffering from mental health problems, they're missing a lot of days from work. Disability FMLA is allowable for someone who has a mental health problem. There's low morale and also increased healthcare costs. Most organizations turn a blind eye. They don't do anything about it. They're not engaging it. They're not talking to their employees about it. They're uncomfortable talking about it. They, as supervisors or managers, they're not sharing that they themselves are struggling a little bit. Hey, you know, I'm feeling on edge a little today because I saw something that was very disturbing on yesterday. Or, yeah, I've been anxious because we're not receiving any income, and I haven't received an approval for this PPP so that I can try to pay you guys so that you have some income. So we kind of have to have that open communication and be somewhat transparent so that people understand what's going on. Nearly 3/4 of workers say that their employers champion mental well-being in the workplace. So this is important to employees, as important as equality, sustainability, and diversity. People now are very mindful about mental wellness, and they want their organizations, their employers to also be mindful as well. So there are things you can do, like training your staff on how to recognize the signs of their mental health problems so that they know when they should reach out for help. Some big organizations and agencies, they have what's called EAP, employee assistance programs, but small businesses may not. So this is something that you definitely have to be aware of so that you can engage it when it happens. We got to create a culture around mental illness so that people feel safe, that there's no stigma, and that people know that they have job safety if they're enduring a mental health problem. We don't want people not to reach out for help. We want them to come to us for help and to talk to us when they're struggling or when things are not going well in their homes. We got to look at the whole person, and that whole person. My other model besides brain love has been all the pieces to the puzzle. So that's the physical wellness, the mental wellness, the spiritual wellness, all of those things. So the mind is not any different, and it's the most impactful because it controls everything that we do, how we walk, how we talk, what we say, how we feel. We got to challenge those misconceptions that someone who has a mental health problem is a weirdo, or don't talk to him because he's, quote, crazy, close quote. And we have to, that being said, have to be very mindful of the way that we use our language. We have to be respectful and not use labels like that, like the crazy and the unstable. And we have to offer each other support. You may hear me say on other platforms, love, 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 love. Just being nice to people and respectful and courteous and loving them, and showing reciprocity for certain things. So you want to create a safe space for your employees so that they can express their confusion, their misunderstandings. When people are confused, when they don't understand, that can lead to anxiety, to uneasiness, to restlessness, and it can cause other problems from there. It's a vicious cycle. You have to give your team the opportunity to ask questions, to have clarification, and you want them to feel comfortable about mental health. Now, we don't have to go through this entire slide. I'm just showing you some of what could challenge a person in your workplace, or even you as a manager, as a supervisor, as a business owner, right? So we have work and life stress. We may have issues with sleeping and hygiene. There may be problems with nutrition for the brain. A lot of people don't drink enough water every day. A lot of people don't eat healthy. And so what we're eating, not only does it impact us physically, but it also has an impact on our brain. Look at you getting your water, Eric. Let me get mine too. Cheers.
Get mine too.
So that's 64 ounces or more. You don't got to stop at 64 ounces. Your brain needs to be hydrated. Our brain is composed mostly of water, 70% at least of water. You got to hydrate your brain to feel better, you process quicker, things that you'll be able to retain information, remember things, you'll feel differently. Sometimes if I get sluggish throughout the day, I'm like, oh, I need some more energy so I can get through this. I'm not reaching for Red Bull. I'm not making another cup of coffee. My coffee is in the morning. Instead, I get some water and I just refresh, I hydrate, and you'll feel better. There's the concerns about anxiety, nervousness. Some people have panic attacks at work. You know, that's a real thing. You're having a panic attack and it feels like for a lot of people a heart attack. You're calling 911. The work flow is disrupted. The ambulance is there, hour, 2 hours, you know, during their assessment, taking someone away. So these are real considerations. Sadness, depression, personality disorders are a huge one. Oh my gosh, because if you have someone who's on your team who has a personality disorder, they can split your team in a way that no one gets along, that no one likes one another, that there's a lot of negative energy. We should just have a separate discussion about personality disorders. Narcissists and people who have borderline personality disorder, they are a freaking cancer for your team and can be very disruptive. So when I interview potential people to come and work at DRT Behavioral Services, I'm always looking to see, okay, what's their energy like? How do they make me feel? Do they make me get this? Because a lot of times when people have personality disorders, you just feel like you don't want to be around them. They make you sick, literally. So that's a consideration too. Communication is big. You got to talk to your staff about communicating, sharing what they're thinking. If they're feeling challenged, to share that with you. Communication means also telling them they're doing a good job. Hey, I like the way that you did that. Or, hey, I like that recommendation you made. Or, hey, I like that plan you made for such and such. Because everything can't come from you as the business owner and as the manager. You want to have a team behind you who's just as powerful as you, right? Someone should be able to look at your entire team and not tell who's managing or supervising or who's leading that team, because you've developed those people to be just that good. You don't want to be the only competent person on your team. Conflict resolution. Why you shook your head? Say that again, Eric.
I said absolutely not. I mean, that's why you hire people. You hire people to do the work that has to be done as a team. I mean, when you come together, you figure out the game plan, and you give people the power to go do their job. You know, that's one thing my team will tell you. I'm not a micromanager.
There it is.
You know, micromanagement, you know, there are micromanagers, and that's the way they work. But, you know, my style is definitely not micromanaging. It's empowering people to do their job.
Yes, sir. That's my president. Go boss man.
Yeah. Empowerment is important. That is important. So the whole conflict resolution, how do you guys resolve issues when there's a problem on the team? You know, how do we just work on it and then keep it moving and go on to the next thing? And so I won't go too much into these other categories, but I want to say this: PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is undiagnosed in the Black community. And so what we have seen recently with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, that is those things, those types of things, but also the Black on Black crime and the killings in some of our neighborhoods. A lot of that stuff, those are factors in why we have developed post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and just haven't been diagnosed. Also, we have a higher amount of domestic violence and sexual molestation and abuse in our children. So those are the things you have to be aware of when you have people working for you and with you. There's a whole background that comes with a person. All righty, so
and I would say even the whole thing of just getting to work. I mean, you talk about, you know, in our communities, a lot of people don't have transportation. How are, you know, and just look at the rain. We've had rain for the last, 5, 6, 7 days. You got to go out there for those, and a lot of our employees, a lot of are essential because either they work in a grocery store or a business that's essential, whether they're nurses, whether they're working in housekeeping. You know, a lot of businesses now are out there providing services to open up businesses. So just the whole process of getting to work, it can be challenging.
Right. So right now, Dr. Thomas has dropped quite a bit. This is actually one of the few, probably the first time that someone done a presentation so well that most people are speechless. I haven't received any comments about questions. Everyone just taking in that information because it's so needed and powerful. And a lot of us don't even want to interrupt the flow that you were just in terms of really sharing the challenges that are facing our community and what we can do to actually address it. So I want to make sure I give the opportunity for those that are on Zoom and on Facebook to take the time now to write in your comments, write your questions, so we can have a conversation with Dr. Thomas while she's here and available. She is a recognized in South Florida for her expertise in behavioral sciences, especially with our community. So this is a time for us to engage. And I just want to start it off because, as you mentioned, a lot of our mental stability comes from what happens before we get to work. And lately, many of us have been waking up to news or going to sleep to news about police brutality and killings. And it's been triggers. And I've been seeing quite a bit on my timeline of people saying, I don't want to watch the video. I don't want to think about this. I'm taking a break from social media. And many people just not wanting to engage. And others are saying, I'm tired. I'm done and I'm triggered. What advice do you give people who it's like this balance between, yeah, I want to care, but I don't want it to mess up my life? Like, how do you, how do
my mental state? I don't want to mess up my mental state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's, Mayor, that's a very good question. And it's a challenging one because often I have to dig deep and I have to, I'm a mother of a 24-year-old Black male. And I'm afraid, I've been afraid for my son, you know, especially when he was in high school and he got a license and he could drive. And, you know, every day he's out there, I would think, oh my goodness, please, Lord, just cover him. I would pray, don't let anything happen to him. The thing is this, we know that these unexpected things can occur, and we know that these white supremacists are out here and these racists are out here, and that we have targets. I mean, as a Black person in America, we have targets on our backs. Black men, maybe even more so. And that's the thing that you have to allow to empower you. That's the thing that you have to use to motivate you. And so just like with anything, when when there's devastation and when there's a lot of negative reports about certain themes or about things that can sadden you or upset you, you have to listen to yourself, right? So maybe it won't have as much of an effect on you if you read it in verbiage, if you read it in the paper about what happened as opposed to watching a video. You have to know your own limitations. You have to know how much you can take and how much you can't take, and listen to yourself. It's okay not to watch the video. That's all right. I didn't watch the video of Ahmaud Arbery for a few days. I just did not want to watch it. And I'm a mental health professional, but I'm still a person. I'm a human being. I'm Black. My parents are from Mississippi. So these things stir up a lot inside of me emotionally. It saddens me. The situation with George Floyd, just watching that man on top of him with his hand in his pocket to apply more pressure with that knee. Those things will just challenge your every ability to remain in control and stay in control. But that's what we have to use to motivate us to stand together, to get united, to create a plan so that we can do something about this, so that America can know that we are a united front and we're not going to just stand by and allow these things to occur. So the answer to your question is this: know your limits. If you feel like you can't deal, then don't. If you've seen enough visually, then maybe catch up on the news by reading about it or allowing someone who you know will share facts and information with you correctly. Allow them to just kind of tell you the gist of what was happening. So we have to limit our exposure to these traumatizing type things. And I tell people all the time, PTSD can happen to you, post-traumatic stress disorder not because you were actually the victim or you were there. It can happen just by watching what's on television, what's on the news. A lot of people develop PTSD from 9/11. A lot of Black Americans have PTSD from watching the news and seeing these things happen to the Sandra Blands, the Eric Garners, Trayvon Martin, you know, and it may not even be the situation itself that makes you uneasy and causes you anxiety. It may be the result, the result of what happened, the people not being arrested, not going to jail, you know, the cases not being remedied correctly, justice not being served.
So we actually have two questions that are very closely aligned. One from Valerie Crawford, another one from Beverly James. And they say, Valerie says, can I share some ways we can support people who may need mental health therapy, yet feel seeking therapy will make them believe that people think they're crazy? And Ms. Beverly said a similar question, like, what advice can you give someone who refuses to talk about mental health issues because they don't want people to think they're weak?
Yeah. So, and that's why we're doing this today. Prevention is key. Education is key, really. So people will feel more comfortable. The ones who don't feel comfortable is because we've created this stigma in our country, and we've also created a stigma that's worse in the Black community. So by so many of us just coming forward and advocating, and other mental health professionals saying it's okay, and I also went to therapy and these types of things, and folks who have a platform like Waka Flocka, who on Memorial Day, he tweeted, "I'm dedicating my life to suicide prevention and mental wellness." So the way that we make people feel comfortable is we normalize it, we talk about it, because it is normal. We're all on a spectrum of mental health concerns and problems, whether it has something to do with how you engage people, how you interact with people, your personality, the temporary emotions that you might feel when things happen to you. You may not develop a very specific form of depression, but we've all have had anxiety before performing, anxiety before asking someone out on a date, or so there's a spectrum of things that happen. Relationship problems, you know, bereavement and grief, those are considered mental health problems. So the way that we help them is that if you're saying, okay, this is your staff, you let them know from day one. And I encourage staff meetings and huddles and team meetings so that people can have an ongoing dialogue. And that's where you can put out there, hey, guys, it's okay if you're having any mental health concern, come to me in private, let me know. If you need us, we're there for you. Or have people come in and speak to your staff about, what does depression look like? What does anxiety look like? Because then people are educated, and the more they hear it, the more they receive it, the more they feel comfortable in asking for help or privately going to get help.
So another question, Richard Thomas put in, what can people do to feel better during these times? And I would like to add on, because some of us, we got to work, we got to deal with kids, and sometimes things trigger us. And we can get affected, and we got to get ourselves right to deal with our family, got to deal with work. What do we do during those times in which it's all coming down, but you can't show it at that moment? How do you feel better and get yourself right during those times?
Affirmations are everything. So I tell myself, when it's coming down, I am that boss. I'm that person. I'm going to get this done. You reaffirm it for yourself. That's number one. The mind is powerful. Psychologically, you convince yourself, you let yourself know, girl, you did this before. What you talking about? Go ahead, get this done. So you start out by reaffirming for yourself that this is why I'm here today, because I've done everything correctly. I know what I'm doing. I can do this. Yes, this may be a little challenging, but I will figure this out just like I've done everything else. And so, you know, we haven't talked about that part of the presentation yet. What are some of the recommendations? I said there's some basic ones, and then there are some specific ones. So as far as feeling better during these times, you got to remain hopeful. Hope is very powerful. Remaining hopeful and believing that things will get better and things will change. You have to do that, because what's the alternative? Telling yourself that, oh my God, this is going to blow up. This is just going to be the worst thing ever. It feels better to tell yourself positive things and good things and great things in comparison to telling yourself negative things all the time. The other thing to help you in feeling better or to manage is to keep a schedule, have structure, be organized. Those three things are pretty powerful. That's how I've always managed my life, is to have some structure, to be organized, to always have a schedule, those sorts of things, and have limitations. If you know that you're busy doing A, B, C, don't take a phone call during that time. You know, send it to voicemail, set some limitations so that way you're remaining organized. You don't have yourself scattered all over the place. And then also with COVID-19, you got to expect the unexpected. And whenever you got to expect the unexpected, not just for COVID-19. So we have to do things like what I call coping ahead. You have to plan ahead for things. You got to have a plan B. You got to have recourse. You have to have other options in case things don't go the way that you're planning for them to go. That structure and that control are very important.
You know, Doc,
Eric,
a lot of us, a lot of people are on Facebook. A lot of people are Zooming in, and probably everybody here is probably used to just being busy, always doing something. And right now, because of COVID, a lot of us are working from home. A lot of us are doing things differently. But even before then, we felt that we had to be there. We had to be engaged. And I think that's one of the things, is knowing when to say no. Yes. You know, hey, knowing when I got to sit my behind on the couch and just chill, listen to some music, go out in the yard, pull some weeds, or
make a garden like you did, make a pond like you did.
Yeah, make a garden, you know, work on building a pond, or whatever it is that you do, other than what that daily go to work routine is. And then we have a lot of people who are retired that are dealing with COVID. And then, you know, the one thing you were talking about earlier about the challenges that people have, and I'm not trying to be a smart or snide at this, but here you are at home, and we've been told to stay home, and we talk about relationships. Some people are stuck at home with somebody they don't want to be stuck at home with. Talk about that.
You really want me to talk about that?
Trying to get some folks in trouble around here.
No, I'm not trying to get folks in trouble. I'm trying to give folks some help and how to deal with that issue or concern.
Well, you know, so some relationships will grow and some will go. And so it's one of those things where it's forcing you to engage the real issues in your relationship. So meaning, if you had these issues before and you guys would never see one another because you would come in, she would leave, or, you know, vice versa. Now, hopefully people are being mature adults about it and they're having a conversation. And maybe now people are, I don't want to say mustering their courage, but it does take courage to walk away from a relationship. It takes having that belief in yourself that you'll be okay being alone, leaving that relationship. Because oftentimes when people stay, it's because of a level of comfort. It's because of what people will say. It's because of not wanting to start over. Some relationships were doomed from the beginning. And so COVID-19 is one of these things where it's forcing some people to look at their relationship and their lives. And I tell people, couples who come in, and also for individual psychotherapy, why would you want to stay with someone for the rest of your life and you don't like them? Or for the rest of your life and they don't make you happy? Or for the rest of your life and you don't like going home? Or once you get home, it's like you guys don't even talk to each other. You sleep in separate beds. Why are you doing this? And see, people don't think about that why. When you challenge them to process it and give you a verbal answer, then that's kind of when they say to themselves, they chew on it, they process and say, yeah, why am I doing this? Life is too short. We don't know what comes next after Earth. Some of us have a strong belief about what comes next, but life is too short to stay in a relationship that, I almost cursed, that sucks. I'm going to say that fudging sucks. That fudging sucks.
Let's go to another point. Talking about COVID. A lot of people are working from home now. Businesses are probably going to pivot because they're going to realize that they don't need that space that they thought they needed because to bring employees in. But some people are going to say, well, you know what? I don't want to go back to work no more. You know, I don't want to go back to doing what I was doing. Um, Speak to those folks who are having that struggle in terms of how do they move forward.
So and we have some folks who have access to our services because they have anxieties about going back to work. They don't want to go. So we're helping them in individual therapy sessions. Some of our therapists are meeting with these people virtually and talking to them about the process of going back to work. And so for some of them, it has to be a gradual progression, meaning they have to see that things are safe out there and that things are okay. And they need reassurance from the employers or from the company that they have the resources which are needed to sanitize and provide safety for their employees. So that's a big part of it. Some of the folks who don't want to go back is anxieties about, well, how safe am I when I go back to work? Are they going to uphold the rules for the people who may visit the business and force them to wear masks? So if you're a business owner and you're struggling with that because your employees don't want to come back, you got to provide them reassurance. You have to let them know these are the materials or the stock that we have on hand. This is what I'm ordering. This is what we'll do. This is how we'll carry out these tasks. These are the signs that we'll make so that people know they will not be allowed in here if they're not wearing a mask. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But then, Eric, if you're asking about the people who became comfortable with just being at home and not being in the office, well, it comes down to if your boss tells you got to come back in and they're not allowing people to work from home, you got to shit or get off the pot. So if you want to work from home, it may mean that you got to find another job or find another employer, find a company that will allow you to work from home. People, and that's actually it's in my section about specific recommendations for entrepreneurs. Sometimes people are so unhappy because they won't make a decision to either stay or go. If you're not happy, go, resign, quit, leave it. So for people who want to work from home and your boss or your company is not allowing it, then you may not be able to remain working for that company. You'll have to resign.
Dr. Thomas, you're getting a lot of people saying this is all great points. Philip Wells on Zoom says all great points. Richard Thomas says excellent content on Facebook. We're getting a lot of likes and loves. Kanasha talks about you just so on point. You're preaching. Donna say you had a great presentation, very informative. Amanda Bazil talked about affirmations are everything. And a few they said don't get her started on the relationship. So these are all good stuff. So I actually have two questions so far right now. One is from Corrine Gentile's been on many of our calls, and she was like, what do you do if you feel that someone, no matter what their race, keeps blaming others for their problems due to their race? They keep saying they can't go forward due to racism or discrimination. What do you do?
Well, so what you do, I guess it depends on the capacity you serve in for that person. I don't know if she's speaking from the position of being that person's boss or that person's supervisor. Maybe that person is a friend. Maybe it's just someone that she knows. The thing is this, you can't, it's good to educate people and share ideas, but there's limits to that, because unless the person is receptive, unless they're ready to receive and consider changing the way that they're thinking, there may not be anything you can do. That person may be stuck. That person may have to basically just deal with limitations with things. And that person will probably have to come and see one of my therapists. Philip Wells is actually one of the therapists in the office. He's a coach, he's a therapist. So seeing someone professionally is probably what that person needs in that scenario, because that's the person whose glass is half empty instead of half full. So we have to use specific techniques that lay people may not be privy to help advance that person in their thinking in the way that they see things.
Okay. Mozella Brown asked, what advice can you give to family members who do not want to admit to mental illness, will not seek therapy, and believe COVID is not real?
So people who have mental illness, that could be depression, anxiety, could be schizophrenia. It could be dementia. We forget about dementia when we're talking about mental health problems at times. And so a huge population are elderly. Some of them have cognitive inabilities, or, they can't process things, they can't remember things, and they can't process that COVID-19 has been deadly and it's real. Whatever the case may be, the only thing really that you can do is just continue to educate them in a loving way. We can't force feed people, you can't force them to learn information, can't force it down their throats, but you can just speak on it and just sort of lovingly and caringly just talk about it. And give people reminders like, hey, you got to wear your mask when you go out, or, be sure to wash your hands. So just give them those gentle reminders, because in the end, people are going to do what people want to do. And when they have a mental health illness, they have, depending on how severe that illness is, they have limitations in how they process information. If they have schizophrenia or if they have psychosis, there's a huge limitation in that. I've had patients in the hospital who just one lady was Baker acted because she lived in the group home and she kept leaving. This was in the beginning of COVID. She kept leaving the group home, and so they Baker acted her. And let me tell you, the Baker Act law does not support Baker acting a mentally ill patient because they won't adhere to the rules of COVID-19. They let her go. And they said if she infects other people, if she becomes infected, then that's what it is, basically, is how that came down. You cannot Baker Act or force someone to be locked away because they won't listen to or won't adhere to the rules or the regulations regarding COVID-19. So you're very limited on what you can do when someone has a mental health disturbance or they're not listening to the recommendations regarding COVID-19. Just focus on you.
You have a lot of, and I don't know if this your perspective, I guess. You got a lot of conspiracy theories out there in terms of COVID-19, what's happening, where it came from. And then I guess that goes back to people not believing that it's real. Mm-hmm. So what has been your experience with that whole thought process?
So COVID-19, the most extreme thing I believe is some of my patients have had exacerbation of psychosis. So folks who already had some limited functions because of having schizophrenia. So really quickly, schizophrenia is a disease where people really don't know reality they don't know what's real. Reality for them is based on their delusions and their beliefs that things are happening when they're not, or they hear things, see things that they don't. Their life is different from everyone else's because they're seeing it from another viewpoint due to their psychosis. So some of my patients have created a lot of theories and conspiracies about COVID-19 because of having that illness of psychosis or schizophrenia already. It has caused some of them to be more paranoid and more afraid and not to sleep. So that's one extreme. And then there have been patients who didn't have any mental health problems, but because of COVID-19, they have become so afraid of dying. So the experience has been more so that people who didn't have significant anxiety before, or nervousness or sleeping problems, they have those things now because of the conspiracies that you alluded to, Eric. It's, the information that's put out there that we believe is factual, but then you have these other things, the other fluff that you see on certain sites, or people tweeting, or people placing on social media, and you can't help but see that somebody posted something. So it's causing people to feel more afraid and more anxious. And that's where you have to limit the platforms that you go on. You have to limit what you read, what you watch, who you allow to talk to you. Some people, I've already told them in my inbox on Facebook, look, don't send me this garbage. This is unfounded. Stop sending this to people. And Facebook, I noticed, has been blocking things. Like when someone posts something or shares something that is, what do you call it? Fake news or something, propaganda, you'll see that there's a block.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So moving forward.
Go ahead.
Yeah, moving forward. Post COVID-19. I don't know if there is a post COVID-19 because, you know, until we find a what do they call it? Not a remedy, but a
The vaccination.
Vaccination.
And yeah.
They're saying, you know, we're going to have this social distance. I know businesses are opening up in Dade County, opening up last week. Certain municipalities, city of Miami opened up yesterday. I'm not sure about Miami Gardens in terms of their timeline, but we're starting to come, I guess, back out, and but it's still with limited exposure, still social distancing, and then you see these pictures online of people just kind of ignoring it, going out without masks, um, gatherings still of no more than 10 people. Eventually, I guess it'll come to gatherings of 50 people. And that probably will go through the end of the year before they open it up to more than 50 people. What have you been hearing, and what is your outlook for through the end of the year, I guess?
I think the rest of 2020 basically is a wrap. I know that's not clinical, but I think 2020 really is just, we'll just all be waiting patiently to kind of see what unfolds. I think it's good to make a plan if you have a business to try to make some revenue, to try to get your business going again, and to try to be successful with that. But just always expect the unexpected. I would say intuitively, I believe, and I'm a hopeful type of person, you know, the glass is half full. So I believe, although people are saying July is going to be a spike, I think it won't be. I don't think we'll have a spike in July. I don't think September will be a problem. That's just what my intuition is telling me. It doesn't mean that I will disregard safety measures and precautions. I'll still proceed accordingly in protecting my staff and our environment and things like that. But I think people should not dwell in, like you said, Eric, those conspiracy theories, the things that we don't know. The experts don't even know. We don't know if there's going to be a spike of any sort. What we can do is just maneuver and operate the best we can with what they're allowing us to do. So let's see, it's June already. And phase 3, I believe, is not until what, July, mid-July, something like that. Like the lounges and the clubs. And so I don't know if there'll be concerts again during the summer or if all that. I think most places and venues have just canceled everything for the summer. And we're starting over with the fall. That's what it seems to be. And so again, with being hopeful, I'm hoping that herd immunity is taking place, right? With this gradual progression back into society, with viruses and infection and certain diseases, herd immunity can be developed. And basically that comes about from people sort of being exposed fully, and maybe not developing the illness. And then, you know, so eventually the more you see the virus or the contagion, your system is able to get rid of it or ward it off. So I'm hoping that we have herd immunity, and that this goes away. But in the process, people have to do certain things to maintain their mental wellness and their sanity. You know, if it's okay, I can give the other basic recommendations that people can sort of try to live by and utilize, so that way they stay calm and tranquil while we're going through this process of transitioning back.
Oh, absolutely. And then you just said something, I never heard that terminology, herd immunity.
Correct. Yep. So when we get off the call, if you don't have another Zoom, go on Google.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very important concept. So I'll type it in here too, just in case. But it's an important concept for survival. We have to have that, because if it never existed before, there are many things that could have killed this entire planet.
Absolutely.
So a lot of our being able to survive has been based on herd immunity.
Okay. Interesting.
So, Dr. Thomas, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your morning to really give such an informative, powerful presentation that fits the needs of this community right now and at this moment. And I just want to thank you. Do you have any last final remarks or summary before we close out?
Yes, because you know, we highlighted so many problems and areas of concern, and so I always like to leave people with solutions and recommendations, so that way they're not just left with a problem. Misinformation is deadly, so I encourage everyone, just be careful what you're utilizing for information, where you're going for your source of information, because it can really cause people just to feel so unsettled and restless that they can't function. You know, they're not sleeping, they're not able to do things properly. The social distancing, the voluntary isolation, and the quarantines have been challenging, but we can overcome these things just by sticking with the simple stuff, the things that we know are basic, the diet, the nutritious diet. I'll be posting on my blog soon things that you can eat on a daily basis to, as we're getting back out here, to reduce the chance that you may become infected, right? Because there's certain things you can do to boost your immune system. You want to stay social. So these types of platforms, Eric, Mayor, the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, you guys creating this session at 4 o'clock for people to come on and process, those things are important. So people should try to associate themselves with organizations and network and have support. So join the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you have a business. If you don't have a business, you know, still join and be a part of it, because information sharing is important. The thing that leads to anxiety the most is the not knowing. When you know and you read and you have information, it's power. You got to use your resources. You want to, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you want to recognize employee accomplishments. So if your business was still open during this period, be sure that you're grateful. Tell your workers that, hey, I'm so glad that you're still working and we're doing this, we're doing that. Reward them, you know, buy them meals, buy them lunch. When you guys come back together, maybe have an award, like a little group huddle where you give out some sort of award, certificates or whatever. Let them know that they're appreciated. And you also want to promote work and life balance. You got to ensure your employees and your staff, your team know that that's important to you, that you know that they're trying to balance their work and their life. You want to help them manage their workloads. Don't let people get overwhelmed with what they're doing. You may have to step in and help them create structure, to create a schedule, to prioritize. That's important. And also help people access treatment. Help them, tell them how to get treatment if they seem to be struggling, or if they admit to you that they're struggling. Now, these are the 5 specific things that people have to be aware of as entrepreneurs. Now, if this is just too overwhelming for you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I'm going to say something that many people don't want to hear. And this is not because of COVID-19, right? This is in general. You should not just sit by and allow your business to close. You gotta apply for whatever you can, try to get grants, try to get the loans, try to get whatever you can to stay open. But if it gets to the point where it's so overwhelming, it's so stressful, because as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you will have early mornings, late nights, no days off. You gotta be built, you have to be built for that, and you gotta be ready for it, and you gotta be able to embrace it. If you're not able to do that, then you may wanna consider, this is not for me. It's just like when someone is unhappy in a job or a position and it's just ruining their mental health. We say to them, listen, the problem here is you don't like your job. You gotta resign. There's no medication that can change that. So as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, if you're not ready for the late nights, the long hours, you have to think about walking away and doing something different to protect your mental wellness. You gotta know the warning signs of anxiety and depression. What does that look like for you? Family members, for your employees also, when they're showing you signs that something's not right. because some people show signs and we ignore it, or we just turn a blind eye, and then they come in and they shoot up the place as they have in the past. And we talked about that earlier. Use your networks for support. If you're a professional, belong to the professional organizations, belong to the chambers of commerce, belong to things like BPN. And you also want to inspire yourself and other people to have wellness habits. Eric, with that garden, you post about your garden, you post about your pond. Mayor, you talk about your fitness group that you do in the mornings or in the afternoon, I think, with your family and your community. So that's a way to inspire other people, so that way they don't feel like they have to be doing something that's work related. There's a lot you can do that can help you relax. And there's something I call just sitting still. Sometimes you got to be comfortable with just sitting still. You don't always have to be involved in something. The last thing I'm going to say is a recommendation for entrepreneurs and anyone: talk about mental wellness, talk about mental health. We have to, and that's the way we normalize it, so that way we can end the stigma and people can feel more comfortable in seeking help and seeking care.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Make sure y'all take time to follow her on Instagram, SoundCloud, YouTube, Facebook. Information is there. If you have any, if you need mental health strategies, she is the person to contact. So call 305-981-1700. Again, that's 305-981-1700. Dr. Thomas also has a weekly podcast that she does on YouTube at 9 p.m. On Thursdays. So there's so many opportunities to make sure that you connect and you engage. What we do here at the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce is we want to bring these resources to you. Dr. Thomas has been a member of the chamber and has taken full advantage of the chamber, has contributed to the chamber. And this is what we do as a business platform. We're here to do business with each other. And one of our things that we make sure we do is provide one-on-one technical assistance to business owners. So if you're having a business that are going through issues due to COVID-19, you need access to capital, you need to find out what you're going to do with your employees, and we'll need some layoff aversion strategies. Those are the things that we at the chamber do with our one-on-one technical assistance. We also provide funding for small businesses that we've been doing since before COVID-19. We are a resource for this community, so they have consistent access to capital and business assistance and help. During COVID-19, we actually cut our interest rate from 8% to 4%. So please, if you want to learn more about that, please check us out. There's other resources right now through the Miami-Dade County and Tools for Change, where you can get up to a $25,000 loan if you did not qualify for a PPP program. There are opportunities. So we want you to know that we're in this together. We are here for you. There are resources, there are opportunities that are available. We just need to take advantage of them. And we're here to make that happen for you. So feel free to reach out to myself at the chamber if you have any questions or information. So with that, there's a lot of love and a lot of thank you to the panelists on Facebook and on Zoom. Dr. Thomas, we just want to thank you for taking the time to be here and sharing such information. So I want to pass it over to our president to close us out.
Also, Matt, just want to direct people to bizhelp.miami, biz.help, bizhelp.miami. That's with the Beacon Council. And if you need information about PPP or to connect with other businesses as well, they have a website there. And I know Dr. Delvena would be remiss if I didn't mention for them to join my yoga class on Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock. So talk about some of those things that you need to be doing. Join in physical activity, yoga, 8 o'clock on Saturday mornings for an hour, and get rid of all that stress, etc. But anyway, Dr. Delvena, this was an amazing.
Thank you.
I am so glad, even in the beginning, as we connected and we talked about the pandemic that we've been facing since the 1500s. We have a lot of work to do in our community, and it's going to take all of us together, working together to change and to move our community forward. So we appreciate and we thank you for joining us today. We thank everyone who joined us, as Matthew said, on Zoom, everyone who joined us on Facebook. Thank you so much. Please listen out for our next technical workshop that we'll be having, and join us at 4 o'clock. We're here right now through this week every day at 4 o'clock on Zoom. You can get that information from the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce's website, www.m-dcc.org. And please, as Dr. Delvena said, please consider joining the chamber.
Thank you very much, and see you at 4 o'clock. And stay tuned. Make sure you follow us on Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce to get the latest information. All right, everyone.
Hey, before we go, both of you need to say brain love.
Brain love.
Yay!